Would you like to be somebody who understands why women want to be hot nowadays? Then listen to this entire video where I explain how seeking hotness is essentially seeking validation, because men nowadays are granted their sexual impulses, or they're granted to act them out. And when they find a woman who they find sexually attractive, that validates the women, and it validates them on an instinctual level, which is a deep, deep level. And women obviously seek that validation, just like men seek the validation from women. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. Now, it's super important to understand the psychology behind hotness, because hotness is a very fleeting endeavor to seek. And so specifically for women, it's important to know, but also for men to understand, or to prevent yourself falling victim, or not being in control of your sexual impulses, let's say. So there's a key distinction one needs to make here between beauty and hotness. Beauty is essentially, if a woman is beautiful, she is not just physically attractive, but also has a good personality. You can tell she's intelligent, she is strong, and she's essentially somebody who has a high survival rate, and a woman a man would want to be in a long-term relationship with and potentially raise a family with. Now, hotness is really more unidimensional in that it is something that attracts men sexually. So if a man sees a woman and thinks she is hot, he would want to have sex with her, but not necessarily be in a long-term relationship with her. Okay. So we need to take a look at this through an evolutionary perspective. Across time, the DNA obviously wants to survive, and there are certain behaviors that increase your survival rate. And for women in the past, it was things like healthy genes, having a pleasant personality. So if somebody has a pleasant personality, as a woman, for example, she would be invited to social hangouts, to interactions, to events, parties, and she'd be in the in-group, and that would enable her to trade resources, to be, to prevent her from being lonely and depressed and anxious. So it would prevent her from deteriorating and dying. And also she would have the wisdom and knowledge about life, because she would be able to, that enables her to maneuver through life successfully without dying. And it also enables her to transfer that knowledge, that wisdom and knowledge, to her kids, and that would increase their survival rate in return. So this kind of behavior, like healthy genes, so her physical body is healthy, so she has a lower rate of diseases, for example, that are genetically transferred. She would have good genes, a good personality, and knowledge, wisdom, intelligence, because that increases her survival rate. And as time moves along, these traits would be encouraged, and the women, or also men who don't have these traits, would die off essentially. And you could group these traits of like healthy genes, so be physically attractive, a symmetrical face, a pleasant personality, and knowledge and wisdom as beautiful. If you incorporate these traits into one person, you would say that woman, for example, is beautiful. In the past, developing beauty was obviously in high demand because it would increase your survival rate, and girls wanted to be beautiful, but they did not want to be hot necessarily. So somebody who just attracts men sexually and that's it. So men just want to have sex with you. They wouldn't want to be that for several reasons, because it entailed high risks of, let's say, deterioration or body or death. Risk of STDs, you didn't have protection back then, and let alone medical safety nets. In case you get an STD like you have nowadays, if you had AIDS back then, or I don't know when AIDS was more of a modern phenomena, but or other STDs like chlamydia, people died from those, or it's a dangerous thing essentially, so it would jeopardize your survival. Another thing is, if you get children, because you didn't have like birth control, if you got children from sex, which was a high risk, and you were outside of marriage, because the guy just wanted to have sex with you, he did not want to marry you, because if you were beautiful, he would more likely want to marry you. If you got children out of wedlock, you would be ostracized because you would have been seen as a disgrace to the family and to the social group. You would have been ostracized, and now you have a child and yourself, which you need to take care of. And, you know, women back then would have obviously been paid less or even paid at all for work. So you have a woman now who was hot or is still hot with a kid, nobody to take care of the kid and feed the kid. That's basically low survival rate for the child and low survival rate for you because you have nobody to take care of you either. Hence, that would have been avoided. However, what has happened to this barrier? Why do so many people want to be hot nowadays? Why so many girls want to be hot? I think a part of it has to do, not entirely, but might have accelerated or catalyzed the prevalence of hotness, is the birth control pill. So now, when the birth control pill was invented, you were able to have sex without any obvious downsides, let's say, apart from, you know, STDs. But if you use protection and the birth control pill, you know, the risk of it would go down significantly. So in the past, men were not granted their sexual urges. Men instinctually, you know, want to have sex with as many people probably as possible to propagate their genes and increase the genetic presence of in the universe, you know, on the world. That increases the survival rate of the species. But they were prevented by doing that because women did not grant them the sex because it was so risky for women. But now they were granted the sex because women finally, they had less to lose. They said, okay, you know, sex is okay now. Casual sex outside of wedlock is okay. Yeah. So that's one reason. Okay, so and now also I'll explain it in a second, but also the commercialization of hotness and sex, you know, in the last century has accelerated. So you see role models who are portrayed as very attractive, and of course humans want to be like role models. It's kind of, role models are sort of a representation of your potential that you want to manifest, and of course you strive to be like that. So women are encouraged to be hot, and, you know, sex sells, so you have profit as a motivation behind commercializing sex and hotness. Yeah, so that's one thing. Another thing, the crux of it, really, of this whole discussion is that women and men seek instinctive validation from the opposite gender. So in order to propagate your genes, obviously you need a man and a woman. And, you know, humans have evolved then to seek validation and appeal to the opposite sex in order to increase the rate of propagating your genes and the species surviving. So you instinctually want to be validated by the opposite sex, the opposite gender. Okay. So now we have, although gender and sex, I don't know if it's the same thing nowadays, I'm talking about opposite sex. So a man seeks validation from a woman and a woman seeks validation from a man. Now, if men now seek sex as they've always done, but now in the environment there are no barriers to it, their impulse is unleashed, and they seek women to have sex with. So, along with the commercialization of sex, which has hijacked the instincts of men and approves of casual sex. So, for example, pornography, excessive consumption of pornography, you know, encourages casual sex or this urge for sex, and the barriers to it in a man's mind is they're diminished. So they think like, I'm allowed to have casual sex. I want to have casual sex. Let me go and look for casual sex. So they go and seek women, and if a man then finds a woman to have casual sex with, the woman in essence feels validated by that, because it is validation from the opposite sex. Yeah. And also, the historical guiding figure of religion, which advised and explained why humans should harness their sexual impurity and urges in the past, is nowadays absent. There's no force guiding or policing men's impulses or also women's sexual impulses. So that's the thing. So what we have going on here is women, no, so men are fed the story of casual sex and how awesome it is. So they go and seek that. And it sort of overpowers their instinctive drive to actually see beauty or seek for beauty in a woman who can, maintain a long-term relationship and raise a family with you, because the instinct of sex was always there, and it's a deep, deep thing. It's part of your reptilian brain, I think. It's like a fundamentally instinctive thing. And it's so deep that it almost overpowers this urge to find beauty in a woman, along with commercialization of sex. So they're sort of not brainwashed, but manipulated into seeking casual sex, and also the force of, and now women actually condone casual sex because they are able to engage in it with lower risks. So this is all piling up on the man and clouding the man from seeking beauty. So now we have this new domain of validation, which is validation through hotness and not through beauty. Well, beauty is still there and it's still very active, but this hotness seems to overshadow it. So women tend to seek for that because it's so obvious that men are seeking hotness in women and engage in that as a consequence. Women engage in that as a consequence because it's broadcasted, very prevalently. Yeah. And the thing is, though, the genome is still coded, the human genome is still coded to the lifestyle of our ancient ancestors who, tried to harness their impulsive urges. So hotness is fleeting. The thing is, it's sugar-coated. You think that, well, hotness is, you get validated by the man then, but what then? That's a very myopic goal to set, because once a man has sex with you then, or has satisfied the sexual urges, that's it, because all the hotness delivers is sexual urge. Whereas life is a game that is played across time, and the institution of marriage enables or helps support well-being across the long term because it provides stability. Whereas with hotness, you have sex and then you leave and then the thing breaks and you look for hotness again, and you're always engaging in this short-term goal that always is like an iterative process that repeats itself. But eventually, for women especially, this is important, your physical attractiveness decreases after the age of, I think on average it peaks around 20 or something, but then it just starts going down, down, down very early. So eventually you will not be hot anymore, and guys will not seek you anymore, and you'll be outdated, but you'll become obsolete in some sense in the realm of hotness, and you won't have anybody to build a stable life with or to reproduce with. And if you don't reproduce, your genome anticipates you to, and it communicates symptoms of pain and suffering if you don't do it, because it's like, what the hell are you doing? What's going on? Why don't you have children? Why aren't you reproducing? On average, I would say this occurs. So it's very fleeting and definitely not a healthy endeavor to engage in the long term, at least, I would say. So in conclusion, girls and women seek hotness because men have been granted their sexual urges now, and it's condoned. And of course, women instinctually seek validation from the opposite sex, so they want to be that which men seek the most now, which is like sex, So they try to be hot, and hot is, if you're hot, men want to have sex with you, basically. So that is really encouraged, and let's say the barriers to preventing sex in the past have diminished because now you have a birth control pill, you have protection, and it is also commercialized sex, so it is encouraged. So all these things pile up. Men are granted their sexual urges to engage in it. Women want to validate it or be validated, so they try to apply themselves to the desires of men. So you have, But the thing is, it's very fleeting, and this is what religion tried to explain, that sexual impurity had negative consequences and one should avoid it. But because religion is no longer present in the minds of modern day people don't follow that advice anymore. But it's still fleeting. like Christianity still explains the human biology and human society's like sociology, which hasn't really changed much, but people have departed from what is good for their body, let's say, to a degree. Yeah. So please leave a comment below whether you think there are any other reasons why hotness has become so prevalent nowadays. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.